Hi, I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Anita Hossain Choudhry, and I'm pumped to talk about this topic, leader as coach. So, to get started, I'd love to pull up my slides and share them with you. So, today's topic is near and dear to my heart, and I'll share a little bit as to why. But before I get started, I wanted to introduce myself. Again, I'm Anita, and first and foremost, I'm a mom to my daughter, Zayla. I'm co-founder and CEO at The Grand, and before that, I was an executive coach with Reboot and previously head of knowledge at First Round Capital. And in those roles in particular, I saw just how important it was to support your people. It's one of the things that separated the companies that were going to make it and those that weren't. And it's what I talk to my coaching clients about day in and day out. I know that many of you have probably heard the phrase that people leave managers, not companies, but the stats are even more compelling. 57% of employees have left because of a manager, and an additional 32% have seriously considered leaving because of their manager. That's close to 90%. That's why it's so important to get this right. As leaders and entrepreneurs, we all have a toolbox of skills, styles, and competencies to pull from. But in order to be the best leader possible, we need to assemble a diverse and varied toolbox and then wisely select the right tool that will be most useful in a given situation. And again, as an executive coach, I've worked with hundreds of startup founders and execs, and I've seen firsthand that coaching is one of the least utilized, yet most effective leadership tools. And by adding it to your toolbox and calling upon it in the right situations, you can uncover your team's blind spots, help your direct reports grow into more capable leaders, and ultimately enable your team's best work. So, what is a coach? Think Ted Lasso. For those of you who are unfamiliar, he's a fictional football coach who led an underdog team to victory. And what did he help people do? Believe, to feel more confident, to believe in their abilities, and to empower them to find their own answers. Ultimately, a good coach is going to help their players see what they are, what they can be, than what they are. The same is true when you're working with your peers, your direct reports, your partners, your friends. Help them see what they can be and help them realize their potential. Today, we're going to cover a few things. One, we're going to start with the default approach that most leaders take and why this can be ineffective. We're then going to talk about two tactical coaching skills that you can start to use immediately in your work and in your life. And then we're going to discuss when to use coaching and when not to. So to start, I want you to picture a meeting with a direct report, and they immediately launch into a challenge they're experiencing. I bet many of you can empathize with that. And your immediate instinct is probably to fix the problem or give them advice. And that's not wrong all the time. It's just not the best opportunity in every situation. So I want to spend some time thinking about, why do we go into fixing mode? There are four main reasons. And as I read each one, please think to yourself, is this a reason that you've tried to fix someone's problem before? So the first one is, I want to be helpful and relieve the other person's pain. I know the answer. I'm the expert. I want to check this problem off my to-do list. If I can't fix it, they'll know I'm faking it. You might have recognized a mix of these reasons that cause you to dive into fixing mode. What it looks like when you're talking to the other person and you're in fixing mode is, you're focused on a single actionable solution. You'll notice that the conversation style is directive and advice oriented. And you notice that as the person who's listening to the one with the problem, you do most of the talking. I can empathize with this because I had a moment in time where I thought about reason number one, I wanted to be helpful and I wanted to relieve that person's pain. I was managing several people who just graduated from college and I wanted to be empathetic. So I really put myself in their shoes. And I reflected on my first job post college, and it reminded me of a manager who was really unclear and didn't give me the right level of support to be successful. And I vowed to do the opposite of what they did. And I thought, in order to be as helpful as possible, I needed to fix my direct report's problems. So one day, my direct report came into our one on one. She felt overwhelmed with everything that was on her plate, and she really couldn't figure out how to prioritize. And so I immediately jumped into fix it mode and I told her, take out a sheet of paper, draw a triangle on it, and then break it up into thirds. In the bottom of the triangle, I wrote down 3 to 5 things she should work on for the week. In the middle section, I wrote down 3 things that she can tackle in the next 3 days. And then on the top of the triangle, I wrote down one thing that she needed to complete before she left the office for the day. I did this for her every day for several weeks, and I thought by doing so, I solved her problem. But boy, was I wrong because over time, I saw her creativity wane. She would spend long hours just trying her best to get those critical tasks done. And around the same time, I started taking my first coaching course. And that's when I had an aha moment. I realized that I wasn't helping her by fixing her problem. I was actually hurting her because I didn't empower her to trust herself. And I was using my own compass to dictate what needed to be done. It was at that point that I shifted my default approach from fixing to coaching. So instead of being the hero saving the day, I asked myself, how could I enable my direct reports to do their best work and be their best selves? In our next one on one, I asked her to take the lead in filling out that triangle. And to aid in the process, I asked her open and honest questions about what type of work she was most drawn to, where she saw opportunities for the firm to grow. And so by taking a coaching stance, I helped my direct report trust her intuition. And in turn, this allowed her to come up with some of the most creative ideas deployed at the company. And she returned to being that vibrant, innovative person that I hired in the first place. And so this is a good example of when we use coaching, 2 things can happen. We invest in their inner teacher. This means that you're not just solving a one time problem, but rather you're helping them see patterns and behaviors so that going forward, they can develop their own resources and best practices to navigate their challenges. Second, you'll see a shift in your team members' ability to more clearly and confidently articulate next steps that they can take to solve a problem or achieve their goal. So first off, I want to say that fixing and advice giving, it's not the wrong approach. It's just ineffective in certain situations. And so for a lot of situations, coaching is more effective because it helps your team feel more empowered, understood, and valued. So what is coaching? It's getting someone from where they are to where they want to go by tapping into their own wisdom and helping keep them accountable to achieving their goals. It truly is one of the most effective ways for people to develop skills, build confidence, and truly feel a sense of belonging. So, there are a lot of coaching skills out there, but right now I'm going to teach you 2 simple tactics that you can start using immediately with your team. The first is outcome shift, and the second is options exploration. So, outcome shift, what is it? It really gets the other person defining what they really want. As a result, you can clarify what they're solving for. Oftentimes, a person is so stuck in the problem they're facing, they haven't even tried to picture what they actually want from a situation. And without knowing what they want, they can't move towards it. The outcome shift is a set of questions that help orient one's thinking in a way to maximize the possibility of them getting what they want. And so, how to do it? It's very simple. You ask a set of questions. You start with, in this situation, what would you like? And they'll respond. And then you repeat back in their own words what they would like. And then you follow up with, what will having that do for you? And you follow up with another, and what will having that do for you? And you just go through this process. And one thing to note is it's really important to use the exact words that they use and or the exact words of the question as well. So what will having that do for you? By saying will, it presupposes that they will get what they want. And so it puts them in the right mindset. The second tool is options exploration. So, what it does is it gets the other person brainstorming what actions they could take to pursue what they want. As a result, you shift from spinning about the problem to proactively thinking about next steps, moving from reactive to proactive. And so, how do you do it? Again, a simple set of questions. What options do you have to make progress toward that outcome? What other options do you have? What do you want to try first? Now, these two coaching tactics are really helpful to getting into the core of what someone wants. As humans, we're bad at naming our needs at the onset. And so asking questions can actually help clarify what we want. For example, a team member I had wanted to get their MBA, but was really stressed out about the decision, the cost, and foregoing a salary. I could have easily said, definitely go. I loved it, and you will too, and really projected my feelings onto her. But the problem with that is that's not taking consideration of her circumstances, her context, her lived experience. So instead, I used this process and we actually uncovered that what she wanted was community. And we brainstormed other ways that she can get community, which was a huge unlock for her. I encourage you to use this in your work and your life whenever someone comes to you with a problem. And so to summarize the difference between fixing and coaching, again, when you're in a fixing mindset, you feel like you're the expert versus when you're coaching, you know that the person has their own wisdom and insight they need to solve the challenge. In fixing, you feel like the only way you can help someone is by solving their problem. Whereas coaching, you know that you can help by drawing out their wisdom. With fixing, you're focused on one actionable solution. With coaching, you're exploring what's possible in the future, and it's a more expansive approach. With fixing, the conversation style is really directive and advice oriented, whereas with coaching, you're really driven by curiosity and asking open questions. And then in fixing, you'll know you're doing it because you'll be doing most of the talking. Whereas when you're coaching, they do most of the talking while you listen and you ask questions and reflect back what you hear. So I want to name that coaching skills are tools, but not the whole toolbox. A leader who only coaches won't be effective. And there are other skills like delegation, goal setting, and making decisions that are also important. And so I do want to leave you with some notes on when you might use fixing. One, if you're dealing with an urgent, high stakes problem. Let's say getting something right is crucial and urgent, and the responsibility is a stretch for someone on your team, then coaching might not be the right fit. You might need to jump right in and provide swift direction, but your team member can still learn by shadowing your instruction and observing how do you handle that situation. The next is if you need to give feedback. Coaching isn't a replacement for clear, actionable feedback, but it can help amplify the effectiveness of that feedback. So let's say you've noticed an opportunity for your team member to improve. You should share that feedback directly, but then add a question to deepen their understanding and brainstorm next steps. For example, you might say something like, I've noticed in executive meetings, you tend to defer to others to ask questions about your domain. I'd love for you to own those questions and demonstrate your expertise. What do you think that would take? How can I support you in achieving that goal? Next, if you're training someone who's less experienced, coaching is most effective when your team member already has some foundational competence in a particular task. And so if your team member doesn't have the basic skills, maybe they're new to this project, maybe they're new to the team, then you want to start with instruction and mentorship. So for example, if your team member is presenting to the executive team for the first time, you might share advice on how to frame their points and how to even structure their slides. But you can drop in open questions to find out more and help them reflect on their learning. Things like, how are you taking in this skill? What resonated for you? What's been challenging and where do you want to dig deeper? Once they grasp the basics, then you can spend more time coaching to actually help them grow. And then lastly, if you're managing someone who is struggling to perform, a direct report who isn't meeting the baseline expectations actually needs clear expectations of what it takes to be in good performance standing. Empathy is paramount, but asking too many open-ended questions won't actually set them up for success. And so use a more directive approach in these situations. With coaching, again, we talked a lot about when to use it, but to summarize, it's when the other person has context and insight that you want to glean, and you want to get more clarity about their challenge and what it is that they actually want. If the other person is asking for guidance and you really want to empower them to learn and solve their own challenges, then coaching is appropriate. So ironically, when I started coaching, I actually fell into that fixing trap. And the reason was that, something I mentioned before, I had this mentality that if I can't fix it, they'll know I'm faking it. As an executive coach, my first clients were CEOs, and having never been a CEO before, I felt a lot of imposter syndrome. And so to compensate for that, I would tell my clients exactly what to do. And this was not helpful because I didn't always have the exact context and actually sent them on a path that wasn't the best for them and their company. I really made it about myself and not them. So I encourage you to not make the mistakes that I made in the past and add coaching to your toolkit. And the last things I'll say is coaching doesn't have to be something that completely replaces fixing, but it does give you more range to handle different situations effectively. And most leaders, they use fixing as their default style. And so I urge you to see how you can instead use coaching as your default and bring in fixing as the exception when you need to. And so to wrap up, I want everyone to take 1 minute to reflect. What's one situation in which you want to try coaching this week? Thank you so much, and I wish you all the best as you're adding coaching to your toolkit. And I'd love to keep in touch. If you want to learn more about coaching, visit thegrand.world or shoot me a note. Thank you so much for your time.